Alright, this game is Robothorium.
I know nothing about it at all.
What's a robot?
Tell us about it. Yeah, what's a robot, Saine?
What's a robot?
Tell us about robots.
So this is a like a turn-based strategy with sort of a meta layer game. As you can see right now, it's kind of like has like an XCOM looking thing. And then there's like side quests you can send your spare robots on.
Okay.
So here's the
like automatic collection kind of side quests.
Yeah, they're kind of like they'll go do a different mission for like a turn, while you do like an actual mission.
Right.
So my favorite thing about this game, really, is that the classes are so different.
Yeah, all of the robot designs look really different just looking at that screen there.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a ton of them. I believe I have one of every robot, at least.
I see.
Right. So the overworld has this sort of XCOM or like, you know, the Darkest Dungeon feel where you like manage resources and try to figure out where to put things, but what about like the general gameplay like on the ground?
Yeah, it'll go into that in a second here, but
okay.
It's kind of like a dungeon crawler with kind of a turn-based combat in it. I wouldn't say it's... I'd probably say it's most similar to something like an actual like Final Fantasy style game rather than like something else. This is
like Darkest Dungeon, basically.
Right. So this is a story mission that I've chosen. So there's going to be like light spoilers, but this is fairly early into the game, so I wouldn't worry about that.
Worry about it too much.
The game has like 5 different factions, and depending on like what choices you make, like story-wise, it'll make certain factions like you better and make other factions dislike you more. Okay. And you're playing as like an artificial intelligence, so you kind of don't really care that much about these people, or like it's really up to you about who you want to support or whatever.
Right.
Oh, okay.
This mission, like
you're
stealing.
Like unaffiliated already, like from the start.
Yeah, this mission we're stealing like ballots or something. I don't.
Oh.
So that we can like do a live counting on camera, because I guess the idea is that this company is like stuffing the ballots or whatever, so we're gonna do a live counting, I guess. Yeah.
So what is this little choice here that you're making? Do they have is this like an event floor or something? Or?
Yeah, since this is a story mission, there's like event squares, and when you walk into them, they make you do things like this one. It's like, do you want to cooperate with the police or not? Here's a skill challenge where you kind of like do a thing, and it like you have 3 choices, and they can have good or bad consequences.
I see.
They're not
so
that
when
hard.
Your robots get to beat rioters to death with stun batons.
Right now.
Now, apparently.
All right.
So.
Oh, a couple of these guys actually look like they're human.
They're all human technically. These guys, even though they look like robots, they're like cyborgs. So.
Oh, so they're like.
Yeah, my dudes on the left are like actual sentient robots, and the guys on the right are all like cyborgs and humans.
So the robots are like your people are fully machines, or are they like human brains?
No, they're straight up robots.
Okay.
You play as an artificial intelligence, and you work with actual robots, sentient robots. Everyone else are humans or cyborgs, and some of the faction people you work with are either humans or robots or cyborgs. So you have sort of a mix in terms of the factions.
I got a question. Like you see how like all of the characters are all like have specific places on the board?
Yeah.
Does that like affect anything, or is it just like placement?
So it actually does affect things. Characters in the back line are less likely to be shot at. And then there's lots of abilities that affect characters in the same line. So you see that little robot with the claw in the back on the bottom left?
Yeah.
He's a healing robot, so if you like, he has an ability that if you put something called a quantum bond on one of the people in the alternate line, it has different effects than if you put it on the same line.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So, follow up to that question, you said that you said that the ones in the back were less likely to be shot at?
Yeah.
Does that mean they are, like, they have a lower chance to be hit, or the enemies will target them less, or...
The AIs will actually shoot at them less.
Okay, so in other words, the enemy's placement doesn't really matter aside from line effect.
Right.
Yours does.
Yeah, you can target whoever. Typically, all of the high damage characters are in the front, and all of the like support style characters are in the back. It's just kind of like however you want to try to deal with it. And that leads me to combat. So the combat is very time consuming. Like this battle right here is 4 minutes. This is the only battle that I don't speed up for the purposes of this video. Every other combat I'd speed to triple speed because it is so time consuming. Like I have one battle that's like at least 40 minutes or something long.
Wow.
And that's kind of my biggest problem with this game, is that all of the combats are they're basically wars of attrition.
Yeah.
So you see my robot, like he just healed 300 shield or whatever, and he has other effects that will give other people shield, and every character in the game has a regeneration score, which they'll just naturally regenerate shield every turn. So you're constantly trying to out-damage their shield regeneration.
And also out-shield their damage.
Right, so it's like, maybe not the best design.
Yeah, this actually...
Well, I mean, if you go to a game like XCOM, you usually get like 40-minute combats, but that's an entire mission. Right. There are multiple combats within each of these missions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like this video is... Our raw footage right here is 30 minutes. That's including three fight combats that have been sped up to 3 times speed. And the reason why I picked 3 times speed is you see that arrow in the corner that says ×1? I found out much later that goes up to ×3 and it makes the animations go faster.
I see.
Which helps a little bit, but like, again, because all of the combat are wars of attrition, it can really take a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of that, that was honestly one of the things, like, that I found... That's one of the things I feel like a lot of people who have problems with turn-based combat have with turn-based combat is... Because I was playing Yick, right? And this is one thing I'm not going to talk about in the whole fucking video I make for Yick. I talked about it a little bit. In Darkest Dungeon, when I was playing that, the combat moves, like, really fast, and it's really punchy, so it's really fun, and every time anything happens, you're like, oh, shit, and you're constantly making, like, choices like, on the fly.
Is that 1 health, and you get hit, and it's like, pa-chung, and you, like hold your breath for only, like, half a second before you see death blow or resisted.
Yeah.
But, like, just the sheer ferocity of getting hit like that gives you an anxiety attack.
Yeah. Oh, and even in a more traditional RPG, like something like Persona, like, the combat in that is so fast, and so, like, the animations are so quick, and the actual enemies don't have that much health, so you don't, unless you're in a boss fight, you're really not going
You might spend 40 minutes on a boss fight in Persona, but in, like, each combat, you're gonna run into so many of them.
So here's the ballot box that I'm stealing.
Take a couple.
Alright, yeah. But yeah, that's, and yeah, that was the thing with Yick. It has, like, a sort of Super Mario Brothers RPG sort of thing, where you have to, like, time your attacks right, but each of the animations for timing your attacks takes so fucking long to do that it's boring, and that can definitely be a detriment.
Because it's a game mechanic.
Yeah, and
if you look at, like, Paper Mario, the quick time events are extremely fast.
Right.
Yeah.
And, like, they're not so fast that a child wouldn't be able to do them if Paper Mario was his first video game, but they're fast enough that it's not like you're waiting an hour to do an attack.
So one thing I do like about this game is it has it was just showing in the background there, it has like a dungeon crawling feel to it as well. And you can do things like find map stuff, and like you can, some of those skill challenges you'll run into, some of them will reveal things on the map so you can avoid combats if you want.
Oh, good. Don't you get more XP for combats, or do you only get XP for missions?
You get XP from combats as well, and each robot has their own experience bar, because you're often swapping in and out robots so that you can send them on side quests and stuff, so there's a lot of that. And another thing that I want to, like, talk about the combat here is, I do think that one interesting thing about the combat is they have this overload system. Rather than any abilities having, like, mana or having like cooldowns or anything. You can use abilities as much as you want, but you have to balance your use of the overflow meter, which that like.
So it's like a heat gauge kind
Yeah,
of.
exactly. It's a heat gauge.
Yeah.
And then there's some characters that will reduce the heat gauge or make it speed up on other teams, or some characters like the purple robot in the back there. When he overloads, he does a huge amount of damage to characters or random characters. So like, there's a lot of cool interactions with that. There's also a ton of buffs and debuffs. Like you'll see on the enemies, they have just a ton. Like, I think 6 debuffs or something on some of them.
Oh yeah, if you're watching the top left-hand corner, all those things under the portraits are debuffs and buffs, huh?
Yeah, all the red are debuffs.
Reminds me of modded Slay the Spire buffs.
Unfortunately, a lot of that is, like, increased regeneration, low or less damage, and some are, like, damage over time, so it's like, all of them affect the shield bar a little too aggressively, which makes combats take forever, and like I was saying earlier, that's the biggest downside of this. Like, even though this combat here is sped up to 3 times, it's still gonna be a big chunk of the video.
Yeah.
So can you have up to 6 robots, or is 5 the cap?
5 is the cap.
So the enemies were cheating here. They started with 6.
Yeah, the enemies seem to get a better action economy than you.
Action economy. Here
they get to go more often than you because there's often more of them. It's like 6 is not an uncommon group of enemies to play against. 4 is actually like pretty 4 is the least I've seen, and it's pretty uncommon to run into just 4 enemies.
Right.
And you know, of course, this combat would go faster if I like was more sure of what I was doing, because I'm like sitting here thinking about how I want to play and stuff. But even compared to something like Into the Breach or something, which Into the Breach maps can take a long time too, but you don't feel like they take for just ever, because you're slowly trying to whittle away their health bar as they heal themselves. So like even then, when there was like 5 dudes on one, it still was taking forever.
Yeah.
So here's the talent tree kind of thing. Each class has their own like set of talents in this kind of ring thing. They actually, they're...
Seems like they have quite a lot of talents there.
Yeah, they have quite a few talents, and they actually do a surprisingly large amount of different things. It's usually not just tiny statistical buffs, though there's some of that too. A lot of it's like, this ability does a 10% chance of doing this, or a 20% chance of doing that, or a lot of them have 2 levels, and it's like 25% chance to do this, and then the next level is a 50% chance of doing this. So it's like some things, like one thing will do a short circuit, which stops them from using any overload charging abilities. The like bonus effect of that might be just stun them instead.
Right.
So I'm like looking through my equipment for this character. This is another thing that kind of kills me about it. Like it seems like there's a lot of little quality of life things that could be improved. You can't actually tell what is being increased without actually like comparing it apples to apples. So like even though it says this is increased and this is decreased, it could also be decreasing 2 other abilities. So you have to constantly like would be looking back and forth to see what it affects.
What do you mean it could also be decreasing? Why wouldn't it show you that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it only shows you what stats it's increasing or decreasing. So, if both of them have a gun stat on it, for instance, it'll say this is more or less than that gun stat. But it might also
show you, like, if it has, like, dexterity, but the other one
if
doesn't,
it has, like,
you might be losing.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's... Even, like, if it has an apples-to-apples comparison, it's fine. But if it adds or subtracts a buff or a stat,
if there's an orange fucking anywhere in there, then you will not know about it.
Yeah.
And you might have wanted that orange.
Exactly. So it's kind of... It feels like there's a ton of little things that could be improved. Another thing that it does is, like, sometimes it makes you have choices like, oh, do you want to give this item to this faction leader or this faction leader? But it won't give you the symbol for the faction leader. it'll just say this character's name or this character's name, and I'm like, shit, I don't remember which one is John. John Smith? Which one is John Smith?
Attention, huh?
Yeah, but it's like if you know, the last time you looked at their names could have been 40 minutes ago because you fought one battle.
Right.
I had a question. Is this game in early access?
It is not.
Okay.
So, it is a completed game, and a lot of, like, admittedly, a lot of my gripes with it are relatively minor, but they kind of add up.
Yeah.
This is like a cutscene. They don't, like, a kind of a story cutscene. They don't really have, like, animations, but it's fine. Like, it does the job. The story is not super terrible. It's, like, not... I don't know. It's nothing to write home about, but there's enough there to make you interested in the actual factions a little bit, depending on how you feel about individual characters. In this scene, he's talking about how robots are evil and should be controlled and stuff. And then he says, yeah, you can tell because there's this faction leader that kills people. And then he gets, like, attacked by the faction that he was talking about in a second here. Which is just like, yeah, that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, like, he's getting shot by the supremacists or whatever, who are like the evil robot faction. I have negative faction points with them because I'm like, no, that's stupid. I'm going with the human-robot coexistence faction or whatever.
Ah, yeah, like Overwatch.
Yeah. So I haven't, you know, I've put like 5-6 hours into this game, so I'm not super deep into it, and, you know, because the combats take so long, like, it's gonna be a long time, so I haven't really gotten a good, you know, idea of how those choices, like, really affect things later, but, you know, for now it seems okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, if later on I'll be locked out of choices because of faction requirements or whatever, but, you know, I assume stuff like that would happen.
Oh, is your health and shield persistent between combats?
Yes, it is. And in fact, that's one
If
of...
your shield regenerates every turn, then it should definitely at least regenerate to full at the end of combat. Not your health, but your shield.
It doesn't.
That's dumb.
And actually, that's one of the dungeon crawling aspects, is that you'll run into those skill challenges, and some of them will be like, hack this computer, and if you fail, you could take damage, or lose all of your shields, or you could do a different thing that gives you a bunch of shields, so...
Right.
Like, there are a lot of ways that it affects that, but yeah, you can... Like, I'll have run into something, and actually I think the reason why I was so low on shields when I started this combat is because I did hit a negative skill challenge, or I failed a skill challenge that, like, made it so that I couldn't... Or I lost shields or whatever. So I went into the shield and it really hurt me because that big yellow guy does a lot of damage, but he, like, is kind of low health now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of easy to overheat too. Depending, well, like, a lot of it's a balance. Your first attack for every character except for one of the characters is always lowers your overheat or whatever.
Okay.
And some of them are just, like, do damage, but some of them also have effects as well.
Right.
One character is kind of a weird character. Instead of having different skills that you can slot in, she has 2 stances, so she has 6 skills, essentially.
Oh yeah, it's like the Abomination in Darkest Dungeon. They normally have selectable skills, but the Abomination can turn into a werewolf and have 8 skills, essentially.
Right, it sounds just like that.
Yeah.
And this game is supposedly very inspired by Darkest Dungeon and Slay the Spire in particular.
Yeah. Not
it's
aesthetic-wise,
looking like.
clearly, but...
But it definitely
like
looks like it has the whole moving between rooms thing going on. Though this one's a little bit more three-dimensional than Darkest Dungeon.
Right. But, you know, and compared to Slay the Spire, it has, like, the same kind of, like, tree thing going on with... I don't know.
And
so,
the overworld was actually a little bit, even more than XCOM, was sort of reminding me of Robotech. Or Battletech.
Battletech. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, and different characters are pretty different, so, like, that guy who's in a little pod, like he has a little drone with him or whatever that'll shoot on its own a lot of times.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of his abilities are like for marking targets, so that drone will just shoot stuff randomly on it, like for you. Yeah. So I don't know. This game is kind of a hard sell. Like you have to really be into the theme of it to really, want to go into it, because I think that its biggest drawback is its combat is so long. You have to be willing to accept that these combats are going to be wars of attrition, essentially, because otherwise you're just going to be doing them forever.
Yeah.
I think that something like Slay the Spire in particular is good about is, characters have blocks and stuff, but ultimately they have one health bar. And, they might have blocks and stuff, but once you're...
kind of regeneration, but...
Yeah, once you're able to get those off, you can usually stick damage on them, but in this game, like, everybody's constantly regenerating shields that you barely feel like you're hurting people a lot of the time.
I don't know, like, enemies that have, like, high health regeneration, like, that should be their theme, right?
Right.
Like, you should have to work to counteract a particular type of enemy that does that, not just
Everyone
the main
is,
gameplay being war of attrition. Like, and it's
Yeah.
fine if you, as a player, want to go for a build where you constantly regenerate your shields and stuff, but it's just not as fun when you have to fight against nothing but enemies that regenerate.
Yeah. And sometimes the combat in Slay the Spire can take a while, but the thing about Slay the Spire is it has, like, really intricate things you can do. There's like a billion different ways, there are a billion different cards, react with a billion different other cards, so, you know, you can spend a while thinking about which, order of things that you want to do. Whereas if it's just like point and click, each of your guys has specific abilities, I feel like it should be fast and punchy like Darkest Dungeon is.
Right. And even then, like, you can get some synergy out of, like, having different robots, but really, like, most of the robots are kind of built around a theme for themselves and not really around each other. So having, like, a random group of robots really doesn't matter which robots you actually have, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So unless you really like the theme of this, like, I hesitate to recommend this over some better examples that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to touch on before we go is, I don't think the enemy design is particularly, like, interesting either.
Honestly, I don't think the art style is particularly interesting.
I don't mind the art.
I don't mind
the art style overall, but I think, like, there's no way to tell what characters are doing what. Like, you see that one on the top right with the backpack?
Yeah.
I really don't know what the difference between him and, like, the dude with the dog is, really. Other than, like, the dude with the dog seems to apply Stalked, which is an annoying ability because it makes it so that every attack regenerates shields. But the guy with the guy with the backpack, I literally have no idea what he does, and I've played a decent chunk of this game. But, like, the cop-looking dude on the top left, like, that guy protects people, and that's annoying. But I don't know, and that's the thing.
So basically all the enemies are annoying.
That's the thing, like, all of the abilities and effects most of the time just come off as annoying, rather than, like, oh, I don't feel excited that I'm being,
Yeah, like,
hit
why
with
don't
stuff.
you get that stalked debuff every time the dog attacks you? You start to bleed, and then it's more dangerous to you, and you're also more lethal to them. And if you have an enemy such as that guard who guards people, great, make that one enemy, not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't
So,
see a problem with having an enemy that can bodyguard another thing. That adds another layer of you having to think. But if you're bodyguarding a person that also regenerates 400 shields every turn, because they all do that, then it's obnoxious and not fun.
Yeah.
To me. I haven't played it personally, so...
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I think that this game could... I feel like there's things that could be added to this game that make it better, but I think right now it's kind of... It's really hard to suggest this game because it's there are just better games than it right now, which is a shame because I was really interested in this game.
Right.
Here's the thing, they just killed a robot. So up until this point, I thought that mattered. but I found out that you can repair the robot as soon as you leave the mission, so that doesn't matter that much.
But you do lose the robot for the rest of the mission, right?
Yeah, you do, which also sucks because now now I have to play against 6v4 matches for the rest of the game, but I don't know, like, it is what
Well,
it
I
is.
mean, at least, like, for the rest of the mission, it's, you know...
Yeah, it is a penalty, but it doesn't feel as harsh as something like Darkest Dungeon. Yeah,
the games you mentioned, they're all pretty damn harsh.
And the funny thing is, like, I have 2 of that guy. Like, I have 2 of that robot that got killed, so...
Right.
Like, it wouldn't have been the end of the world if I lost him forever, but, you know. But I didn't even do that, so, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so that's my thoughts on this game. Maybe give it some time and check in on it, but, you know, or you know, if you're more interested in it than I was, then maybe you should check it out. But...
Yeah, so for some people this might be right up their alley. I think I probably won't pick it up.
Yeah, same.
I would be, if I'm gonna pick this up, I probably would just, or if I were gonna play this, I would probably just go to Darkest Dungeon, because that's what it's giving me the most vibe gameplay-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like
BattleTech.
Yeah, there are other games like it, and maybe you've played those to death, so I could see that this game being for some people, but...
Yeah. That's sort of how I feel about, like, My Time in Portia. It's like, yeah, you could, if you like that kind of game, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, those are our thoughts on Robothorium.
Alright.
Thanks for joining us, and remember, as always...
Stay beautiful.